In the suburbs, your lawn is a competition. And you're all in it, you just don't realize it. And I'm winning. My grass is the envy of the neighborhood. Now, here's what I want you to think about. I'm doing this message on Invigorate. I want to talk about invigorating your life. Here's my question. Show that picture one more time. Whose grass do you want to look like? What do you want your life to look like? My grass or my neighbor's grass? Neighbor. Your neighbor's grass? There's always a smart aleck in the crowd.
Welcome to Church of the Rock from Winnipeg. Stay tuned to this week's thought-provoking message from Pastor Mark Hughes.
So today I'm beginning a brand new series called Pieces of 8. And I'll just let you in a little secret. This is a big stretch, what I'm doing with this title. Because what I'm doing is I'm taking words that rhyme with 8, and they'll be my message title. So invigorate, emancipate, concentrate, frustrate, irritate. Maybe I won't go there, but you say, well, they don't quite work. I know phonetically they work, right? And who doesn't love a pirate theme, right? Arr! Have you ever been to sea, Billy? It's Captain Highliner. He's not a pirate. Well, whatever. So let me give you a little history on pieces of 8, because some of you might not know what that is. From the 16th century to the 19th century, the Spanish used a coin, and they called this coin a piece of 8. And the reason they called it a piece of 8 was the value of it was 8 reals, 8 Spanish reals. Here's a picture of it, and here's what they did. If they had to make change, this is what they honestly did for 200-300 years, is they would just cut it. And if you had to make half of it, they would just cut it in half or cut it in quarters. And you could cut it into up to 8ths. And so that's why it was called a piece of 8. And interesting fun fact, I don't know if you know this, we have this thing in our culture called the quarter, 25 cents. Who knows what the nickname for that is? 2 bits. 2 bits. Where'd that come from? That's 2/8. That's exactly where it comes from. Aren't you glad you come to church here? This is like being live at the History Channel, right? So anyway, today my message is invigorate. And so when you think of invigorate, well, we kind of know what that means. That means to instill life. It means to refresh something, charge something up. And when you talk about being invigorated, different people, they think of different things. If you do something really exciting, you might say, oh, that was so invigorating. Or the Swedish, they love to go in their sauna and then jump into ice water, and they find that invigorating. That would give me cardiac arrest, but if that's invigorating for you, whatever. So when I think of invigorate, I don't know why my brain goes here, but I think of fertilizer. And it's not a big stretch because it means to put vigor into something. And I think we had a garden fertilizer called that years ago, and it was probably in our closet. It probably always makes me think of that. And so I always think of fertilizer. And you may or may not know this, but I actually come from an ag background, so that helps. And that's what my degree is. You thought I went to Bible school. I went to agriculture. And how else are you going to understand the parables, right? And so we talk a lot about this in church, and we talk about sowing a seed, and we say sow good seed and good soil, but no one ever talks about fertilizer. And let me tell you something, the difference between a poor crop and a bumper crop is actually the fertilizer. And farmers will spend more money on the fertilizer than they actually will on the seed. And so because I have this ag background, and even though I'm a long way removed from the farm, I have a yard that I treat like a farm. And what I do, honest to goodness, I want it to look like it's growing a lush crop. And so I go out there 3 times a year and I fertilize. And I do micronutrients and different things like that. My goal is to have the thickest, most luxurious grass in the block. How many of you want to see my grass? Yeah, of course you want to see it. Let's show that picture of my grass. And I took this picture yesterday. Which one do you think is mine, the one on the left or the right? That's my grass on the right. That's my neighbor's grass on the left. My neighbors are gardeners. They spend several hours every single day gardening, but they don't use fertilizer. Now, I only spend 20 minutes a week on my yard to mow it, but I fertilize 3 times a year, and I very carefully do it along the property line there so that there's a clear demarcation between me winning and them losing. See, let me tell you something. In the suburbs, your lawn is a competition. And you're all in it, you just don't realize it. And I'm winning. My grass is the envy of the neighborhood. Now, here's what I want you to think about. I'm doing this message on Invigorate. I want to talk about invigorating your life. Here's my question. Show that picture one more time. Whose grass do you want to look like? What do you want your life to look like? My grass or my neighbor's grass? Neighbor. Your neighbor's grass? There's always a smart aleck in the crowd. You want your life to look like my grass. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about invigorate your life, and I've got a little verse. I'm going to read it to you out of the Message translation because it's beautiful. And it's 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 16, verse 17. Here's what it says. May God himself and God our Father, who reached out in love and surprised you with gifts of unending help and confidence, put a fresh heart in you, invigorate your work, and enliven your speech. So he says this is what he does. When God reached out to you in love, when he sent his son, he surprised you with gifts of unending help. And what he did was he gave you three things. He gave you a fresh heart. He gave you invigorated work. And he gave you enlivened speech. And I like to put it this way. I think if you think about it, it's your, in this order, I think, I'm reversing it slightly. It's your heart, it's your words, it's your actions. And one follows the other. And we're going to see that today. So I'm going to start with this. The first thing is this, is a fresh heart. God gives you a fresh heart. When you come to him, he does something remarkable in your heart. And the word heart in Scripture is interesting because it actually appears more in Scripture than both soul or spirit. The Bible talks about your heart. And it's there 776 times. The Bible goes on and on about your heart. And the reason why, and without getting into a bunch of verses about it, it tells us that our heart is the center of our life. It is the center of our being. We know that that is true, even in a physical sense, right? The heart is the center. It's the key. Like for example, how would we know if you were dead? Like if you were dead, like right now, how would we know that? You know, I mean, let's say, the service ended and everybody left and you were still slumped in your chair. And, you could be just asleep still from the sermon, right? That's a possibility. But how would we know if you were actually dead? What would we do? Yeah, we would look for a pulse, and the pulse would tell us what? It would tell us that your heart was still beating. Now, we would check your heart, wouldn't we? I mean, God is so interested in your heart. I wonder if you ever thought about this. He hid it behind a cage in your body, right? It's one of the most protected things in your whole body. Your heart is in the center. It's behind this big bar cage so that it doesn't get hurt. And it's a mystery to me why we know for a fact that the heart is the center of our physical life, and yet so many people neglect it and do not take good care of it. Why? What's wrong with us? That we don't exercise, we don't do cardio, we don't do these things right. And it's like the guy who went to the doctor, and the doctor says, look, the best thing you can do is diet and exercise. And he says, Doc, I don't deserve the best. What's the second best? Right? We always want a quick fix. My doctor told me, he said, Mark, you're in great shape, but you actually need to do more cardio. And I thought, I guess I could do more cardio. Nobody likes cardio, but nobody likes dying either. So, all right, I'll do more cardio. So I decided I was going to take up running. And, of course, I thought I better start slow. You just don't go out and run a marathon. So I went out, first day, put on my shoes, went out. And this is what I did. I ran for a while, walked for a while, ran for a while, walked for a while, ran for a while, walked for a while, ran for a while, walked for a while. When I got to the end of the driveway, turned around, did it all the way back. Here's what the Scripture tells us. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. It says, guard your heart, for out of it flows the issues of life. Notice how it doesn't say, for out of it flow the issues of physical life. It actually is all life. And our heart is actually the center of all of our life. It's the center of our physical life, but also our spiritual life, also our emotional life. Where do you sense emotions? If somebody is really discouraged and someone let them down, we say they are brokenhearted. If somebody is happy, we say they have a joyous heart. We say that the Scripture says this, that a merry heart maketh good like a medicine. Why is this heart so important? God put it in us, and physically and literally it's the center of our being, but it also is metaphorically the center of our being. Our spirit and our soul somehow seems to emanate from that, and we have this sense and we have this feeling that actually comes from this place called our heart. And so when I look around our world, I'm going to make a bold statement. When I look at our world, I see lots of problems. Do you see lots of problems out there? There's lots of problems in our world. And I would argue that every last one of those problems is actually a heart problem. Every one of them. Think about it. Do we have a racism problem in the world? No, not really. We have a heart problem. I mean, do we have a problem with people having different colored skin? That's not a problem. The problem is people that have a dark heart. That's the real problem, that they haven't recognized. If you can deal with their heart, the race is not the issue. The color of the skin is not the issue. The religion is not the issue. We don't have a violence problem. We have a heart problem. We don't have a greed problem. We have a heart problem. We don't have an envy problem. We have a heart problem. We don't have a gossip problem. We have a heart problem. Every one of these issues comes back to our heart. Why do we have such a problem with that? Because the scripture says the heart of man is desperately wicked from his youth. And every one of us struggles with this. And if we really look at the problem, we always look at the symptom rather than looking at the root. And the root is this thing right here. It's this heart that is often in the heart of man, in the midst of man, a dark thing. If you look in the scripture, it's Ezekiel 36. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. This is what God says he's going to do. This is how he says he's going to deal with your problem, your heart problem. He says, I will give you a new heart. You hear that? I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. He says, I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. God is not doing bypass surgery on your heart. He said, in the verse we read earlier, he said he'd give you a fresh heart. Here he says he's going to take out the heart of stone. He's going to take out that desperately wicked heart, and he's going to put in a heart of flesh. He's going to give you a new heart. And see, if you have a new heart, that changes everything. I don't know how many of you remember this. It was 1967. It was the world's first heart transplant surgery. It happened in South Africa. A man by the name of Christian Barnard, Dr. Christian Barnard, he shocked the world. People didn't think it could be done over 50 years ago, and yet he did it. And here's what's interesting to me about the story of the first heart transplant, is it took place in South Africa at a time of apartheid and the division between the white and the black people. It was a time when the nation had a terrible heart problem. And here's what you probably don't know about this story. The 59-year-old white heart patient who got a new heart got it from a male black accident victim. And I couldn't help but thinking that maybe that was God's way of foreshadowing that maybe this nation had a heart problem and maybe they needed to deal with this before they dealt with what's out here. And see, when your heart changes, we even have medical evidence on this, everything changes. I mean, they know this now because there's been many heart transplants, and they actually have examples of people's personalities actually changing after a heart transplant. I'll give you one single example. There was a 50-year-old accountant with heart trouble. He needed a heart transplant. And I don't know if you know this about accountants, like super boring people. No, that's not true. They're not all boring, just most of them. And this particular one was, had a pretty staid conservative life. He needed a heart transplant. He got a heart transplant, and he got a 21-year-old motorcycle accident victim, a young man, got his heart. After he healed up from his surgery, he took up mountain biking and rock climbing at 52 years old. He had these cravings all the time for watching football, eating nachos, and drinking beer. All of these things that he didn't do before, and the medics couldn't figure it out. The medical science couldn't figure out, why is this guy's personality changing? And they rack it up to what they call cellular memory. Well, whatever that is, who knows? But the point is that our heart is the center of our life, and out of our heart comes who we really are. And that's why the scripture says, guard your heart. And that's why he says, this is what I really want to do. I want to actually take that heart out. I'm not going to give you heart bypass surgery. I'm going to give you a new heart. I'm going to give you a heart transplant. I'm going to give you my heart because I want to transform your life. Now, let me let you know a little secret about what I do here on Sunday morning, because you might not know, or you might not be sure what I'm doing here. And, here's my strategy. Here's how I do it. I'm probably the most linear thinker you'll ever meet. I mean, when I talk about stuff, you probably notice I go 1, 2, and after 2, 3, and everything sort of moves linear. My stories move linear. I build towards a climax. I build a story. I build one point upon another. And what I do is I try to appeal to your logic. I try to speak to your sense of understanding. I try to be logical. I try to take complex situations and make them simpler for you. And I try to be super logical. I try to answer your objections that you might be thinking in your head. So I'm appealing to your intellect. Or at least that's what it looks like I'm doing. But you know, at the end of the day, I'm actually not interested in convincing your mind. At the end of the day, I'm after your heart. I actually aim for your heart because I know the real change happens not when we believe it in our head, but when we believe it in our heart. When something moves that 18 inches from here to here, that makes all the difference in the world. When something becomes a conviction of your heart, that's when you actually act on it. That's when people get saved. That's when people give up a habit. That's when people do something like, for example, you men. None of you would be even married if you didn't follow your heart. Right on paper, it doesn't look any good. But I'm poking, right? You get this, right? But you know what? You followed your heart, and thank God you did because you made the right decision. But if you'd gone and made a list of pros and cons, you might not have done it. And see, we follow our hearts. And so, you know, I always talk about giving, for example, because giving's an interesting thing. When people, you know, God asks for 10%, that doesn't work on paper. It doesn't work for me. But what happens is I always tell people it's a heart issue. And once somebody gets that concept down in their heart that they're to give of their income, I can't talk them out of it. And that's how powerful the heart is. And so really what we're trying to do is we're in the heart transplant business. We're trying to change people's hearts. Because if we can change their hearts, we can change their life. So the first thing is this, is that he says that he will give you a fresh heart. The second thing that I want to go after is he says that he will enliven your speech. And see, here's what you probably know, or maybe you don't know, but the scripture says that out of the abundance of the heart, anybody know the rest of it? The mouth speaks. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. You see, the words we speak are really what's in our heart. If you want to know what's really in somebody's heart, all you have to do is listen to them long enough, and eventually whatever's in their heart will come out. I have people, you know, I'm talking to them, and all of a sudden something really inappropriate comes out. And this is what they always say. I don't know where that came from. And I go, I do. It came right out of that dark heart of yours. That's where it came from. It's the toothpaste test. When the pressure's on, what's on the inside comes out. Isn't that brilliant? You can all imagine that. You brushed your teeth this morning. When the pressure's on, what's on the inside comes out. It's toothpaste or whatever else is in your heart. And so let me tell you a little story about this. So some of you know that I took up tennis, and I joined this men's league. And this men's league that I joined and played tennis with, they were all non-Christians, every last one of them. And tennis can be frustrating. I don't know if you know that, but it can be really frustrating. And if you make 2 or 3 bad shots in a row, all of a sudden you get aggravated. And if you're not careful, some inappropriate words can come out of your mouth. And I noticed with these guys I was playing tennis with, after they made a few bad shots, all of a sudden out come the expletives, and they're dropping F-bombs, and they're saying things, and saying that Mennonite word for manure, and out come these words out of their mouth. And I didn't know I did this. I never knew I did this. But I actually do the same thing, and I have a 4-letter word that comes out of my mouth. And I'd make, you know, my 3rd bad shot in the row, it's gone into the net, and out of my mouth comes crumb. I didn't know I said that. Crumb. That's my word. That's my expletive. Crumb. And these guys heard me doing it after I'd done it, you know, several times, made a bad shot, said crumb. They started mocking me. And they thought, oh, crumb. Oh, I missed that shot. Crumb. And they're thinking, you know, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes over there. Oh, crumb. So at first they started mocking me, and every once in a while, oh, crumb, I missed. And then after a while, these guys started actually saying it for real. And they were missing a shot and go, crumb. And I thought, this is kind of rubbing off on these guys. And it was the very, very last match of the year, and we were wrapping up the season. And I was playing with his partner, and it was break point. If we got this point, we won it and hit it right into the net. And out of his mouth came F-bombs the size of a nuclear warhead. It just came out, boom! When the pressure's on, what's on the inside comes out. And out came all these words, and I went, whoa. And I didn't say anything. We were all done. We lost the match. We're sitting there, and we're debriefing about the day and the season and whatever. And you know what this guy did? In front of all those other men, he turned to me and he apologized for swearing on the court. Now, I want you to think about something. I never criticized any of these guys. I never asked them to clean up their speech. I never judged them, not once. I never said one word, well, except for crumb. And crumb was my word, and somehow that speech changed the environment of the people I was around to the point where they're now beginning to apologize to me. And I thought, we always forget how powerful our words are. Our words are so incredibly powerful. And I'm talking about the negative side of it, but what about the positive side? I mean, of all people in this world, nobody should be more positive than you. We should be the people speaking encouragement and speaking words of life, invigorating those that are around us. We should be the ones with the enlivened speech. You know, I have this friend. His name is David McFarland. Some of you know him. He was with Billy Graham Association for many years. He's preached here several times. And he's honestly the most positive person, the most complimentary, encouraging person I've ever met in my life. And I kind of find him a little uncomfortable because he's always complimenting me. And here's the problem. When someone compliments you, you feel this obligation to compliment them back, and who wants to do that? And so anyway, this is what happened one day, I got to tell you. So David says to me, he says, you know, Mark, you are such a great preacher. I think you're the best preacher in all of Canada. So now I got to compliment him back. So I said, you know what, David? You're the second best preacher. That didn't sound right. So the first thing is this, that God gives you a fresh heart. The second thing is he enlivens your speech. And the last and final thing is this, is that he invigorates your work. And that has to do with your actions. And the reason I'm putting them in this order is because you really see this happening. See, our heart produces our words, and our words produce our actions. The scripture says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat the fruit thereof. In other words, the fruit of your life, the actions of your life, the conduct of your life is actually going to come from the things that you say. And so how we live our life, the invigorated life, is going to be a factor of our heart and our words and our actions. So 100 years ago, we have Dr. Sigmund Freud, the father of modern psychology, and he told the world this, that happiness comes from pursuing your primal urges, like sex and desire and things in this world. And so he went and propagated that understanding. People still believe it today. And yet what he didn't say, although he did say it in other ways, was that man could never fulfill those desires, and they are insatiable. And that in fact what they do is they leave people depressed and discouraged. And Sigmund Freud died at 83, alone and friendless and miserable. And after his death, along came another psychologist, or psychiatrist by the name of Abraham Maslow. And Maslow said, you know, I think Freud got it all wrong. Not entirely wrong. What he saw was the sick side of psychology. He says somebody needs to start talking about the healthy side of psychology. And so here's what Sigmund Freud missed. It's this simple. He missed the fact that we were not created in this and put into this world to serve ourselves and our own desires and our own urges and our own lusts. We are actually put into this world to serve other people and to live a life beyond ourselves. And you will never really be fulfilled, and you will never really be satisfied and truly happy in this world until you learn to begin to live a life beyond yourself. And that is really the key to an invigorated life, is to have works and service towards other people. And when you discover the joy of serving others, everything changes. And Delancey Street was started in 1971, and it was a home for people that were at the very, very bottom of their life, the end of their rope. And primarily, it was drug addicts, drug dealers, gang members, felons, prostitutes, you name it. People who had destroyed their lives with the things of this world. It was their opportunity. And most of them go to Delancey. They actually go there as an option to going to jail. And the judges in San Francisco will often say, I'm going to sentence you to 20 years or 25 years or 30 years in prison, or you can go spend 4 years at Delancey Street. But if you slip up even once, if you have one act of violence or drugs or alcohol, you will go and you will serve the rest of your sentence. So here's a picture of Delancey Street today. It's a whole city block. Right by the Embarcadero. Kathy and I walked actually right by this place. And in this building, this huge building, it's 335,000 square feet today. It houses 500 residents. Every one of these residents come from a world of crime or drugs or prostitution, male and female. Many of them have prison sentences waiting on the other side. And they come to this place. It's completely self-funded. There's no government funding. It's this huge endeavor. It's been going since 1971, and it's run by this little tiny woman. And I call her a little tiny woman. Her name is Silbert, and I call her tiny because she's 4'11" and weighs 90 pounds. And she runs this organization, are you ready with this? Full of convicts and felons without any guards and without any supervisors. and without any paid staff. And every one of those men and women in that institution are responsible for running that thing. And her whole goal, you'll probably figure this out, her goal is to change hearts and transform these broken people into people who are going to be useful to society. And so they do a bunch of things. One of the things they do is they all get a high school equivalency, a GED. They all learn 3 marketable skills. They run a bunch of businesses. That's how they fund it. They have a restaurant. They have an art gallery. They have the biggest moving company in San Francisco. They own it. They all work at this. They have a bookstore and a cafe and a whole bunch of things. And so they're not only funding it, they're actually running it themselves. It's a social experiment that people from all over the world come to see. They can't believe this thing works. And in the last years, since 1971, they have, are you ready for this? They've had 20,000 graduates. And these graduates that come from Delancey Street go on to do productive things with their lives. Here's a picture of just a few of them. One of them is a fire department captain. Another one is a medical examiner. Another one is a social worker. Another one is a business person. There's doctors. There's engineers. There's all kinds of people living gainful employed lives because they were transformed from the inside out. And she has found this incredible model that you can change people. Now, I don't have time to go into the whole parameters of this, but I'll give you the short version. I'll give you the key principle that they live on. Here it is. And it's so simple. It's each one, teach one. And what that means, each one, teach one, is this. Is each new resident has a responsibility to teach, to take on the next new resident after him. And the way someone sort of mentored you, you're going to mentor the next person. And the whole concept, and there's other nuances to it, but the whole concept is this, is to teach these people to quit living for themselves and to live for others and for a cause greater than themselves. And that's how you transform people. Yes, you're transforming them from the inside out, but you do it through this sense of community and getting people's eyes off of themselves. You know, when I look around the church, I see some miserable people. And the reason there are defeated and sinful people in the church, you know why? They're bored. They're just plain bored. They have not discovered the joy of serving others. And I'm telling you, it is a joy. Jesus said what? He said, the greatest among you will be servant of all. He said, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. The model of Jesus, the model of the New Testament, is that we were put on this earth to serve one another. And if we would serve one another, we can change our world. So a few weeks ago, I was doing a service, a funeral service for Joanne, one of our wonderful people who passed away of cancer at 74 years old. And I'm looking, and it's 2 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, and the place is filling up, and the whole chapel is filled, standing room only. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm wondering if we got this covered. So I thought, I'm just going to poke my head in the kitchen and see if anybody showed up. I went into the kitchen. I opened the door. There was a dozen people that were there. And do you know that some of them had taken the afternoon off work so that they could go and serve at the funeral of a complete stranger? I thought to myself, I love this church. This is a great place to die. I can hardly wait. And I thought, why are these people doing this? Why are they serving complete strangers? Why are they doing this? I'll tell you why. Because they have discovered the joy of serving others. And when you can discover that, you'll find your raison d'etre. You'll find the reason that God put you on the earth. He didn't put you here to serve yourself. He put you here because you can make a difference to others that are around you. And it's the only thing at the end of the day that makes any difference. And he said that he surprised you with unending gifts of help to give us this fresh heart, this enlivened speech, and this invigorating work that can change your world. Let's stand together, shall we?
Church of the Rock has services every Sunday at 1397 Buffalo Place, and we invite you to join us when you're in the Winnipeg area. If you'd like a booklet to help you understand more about God's gift of forgiveness and reconciliation through Jesus Christ, please contact us, and we'd be happy to send you a free copy of the Book of Hope. Visit our website at www.churchoftherock.ca. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.